You think you know the story behind Hollywood's biggest scandals, but what if everything you've been told is only half the truth? Tonight we're diving deep into shocking court filings, secret text messages, and the behind-the-scenes battle that could change everything you thought you knew about Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the chaos surrounding a major film release. Stay with me, because what comes next will leave you questioning everything. People think they know someone based on what they see on screen, based on the roles they play, based on the interviews they give. And yet, the line between character and reality becomes dangerously blurred. And in the case of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, the story is far more complicated than the public could have ever imagined. Behind every headline, every social media post, every reported dispute, there is a labyrinth of legal filings, marketing decisions, and interpersonal conflicts that have been quietly shaping the narrative for months. And now, with recent motions hitting the court docket, a hidden story is starting to emerge. A story of reputations on the line, of strategies that backfired, of PR campaigns that went terribly wrong, and of actors, producers, and executives caught in a storm of their own making. The motion before the court claims spoliation of evidence, specifically deleted messages on Signal that allegedly could prove a coordinated digital campaign to damage reputation. But as we dig into the details, it becomes clear that this motion is about far more than missing messages. It is about control, about who gets to present their side of the story, about whether the defense will even be allowed to argue that public criticism was organic and that the events leading up to the backlash were the result of decisions made by multiple parties over months, from marketing teams to studio executives to the actors themselves. And according to the filings, the controversy surrounding the film began long before any alleged digital campaign started. And it started with casting announcements, paparazzi coverage, wardrobe choices, and social media interactions that the public consumed and reacted to in real time. And once Blake Lively joined the project, the dynamics on set reportedly shifted, with tensions emerging between cast members and production staff that were visible enough to create speculation. And as filming continued, the defense claims that additional marketing and promotional choices exacerbated the backlash, including promotional videos, skits, and cross-branded marketing tie-ins that many viewers found inappropriate or in poor taste given the sensitive subject matter of the film. And the marketing strategy executed by Maximum Effort Productions, Ryan Reynolds' production company, and the coordination with other marketing partners became a focal point of public attention, with interviews, social media posts, and appearances adding fuel to the fire rather than defusing it. And according to the defense, the resulting negative coverage was a direct consequence of choices that were made by Blake Lively and Reynolds' teams rather than any third-party campaign. Because the public reacts to what it sees in the moment, and when a promotional strategy misfires, the audience response can be overwhelming and relentless. And what makes this even more intense is that the motion for spoliation seeks to prevent the defense from introducing these very points in court, claiming that deleted Signal messages somehow negate months of documented public behavior, which, if allowed, would erase critical context and limit the jury's understanding of the situation. All of this is a tangled web of legal strategy that includes multiple motions, sanctions, subpoenas, and interrogatories, each designed to frame the narrative in a way that favors one party over the other. And the filings show that the defense intends to argue that reputational damage was largely self-inflicted through a combination of marketing missteps, on-set conflicts between cast and crew, and public relations choices that escalated the controversy, while the plaintiff's legal team has attempted to portray the backlash as a result of a targeted smear campaign by other parties. And this clash between public perception and legal defense strategies has created a scenario where the court must navigate complex arguments about evidence credibility, intent, and causation, all while balancing the procedural rules of civil litigation. And at the center of these arguments are key questions about consent, participation, and responsibility, because the defense asserts that Lively consented to her role and the promotional choices made, including her participation in marketing and cross-promotional events. And the defense also highlights that any reputational harm that occurred was amplified by the plaintiff's own decisions, including public appearances, interviews, and social media interactions that the public could not ignore. And another critical element of the filings is the claim that the plaintiff engaged in strategic media coordination, including sharing selective materials with major press outlets prior to the filing of the lawsuit, which the defense contends was done to shape public opinion in a way that benefited their narrative. And while the plaintiff's motion frames these actions as reactive, the defense argues they were proactive and self-generated, contributing to the backlash that they now claim was caused by others. And every filing that hits the court docket continues to layer more detail onto this complex story, with references to specific incidents on set, marketing campaigns, public appearances, and alleged communications that all paint a picture far more intricate than the simplified narratives seen in headlines and social media posts. And what emerges from these documents is a depiction of a highly orchestrated promotional environment where choices made by actors, producers, executives, and publicists intersected in ways that were visible to the public and open to scrutiny. And as the court considers whether deleted signal messages are sufficient to bar the defense from presenting their case, the underlying tension is not just procedural, but existential, because the defense claims that without the ability to tell their full story, the jury would be deprived of critical context about why public criticism occurred and how much of it was a natural consequence of decisions made by multiple parties over time. And the motion for spoliation itself becomes a battleground for narrative control, because framing the issue as missing evidence allows one side to argue that the other parties cannot present a defense, while simultaneously shifting attention away from documented actions and choices that are publicly available and included in the record. And as the layers of filings continue to unfold, it is clear that the case is as much about perception as it is about law, because what is being argued is not merely who did what, but how much influence one party had over public opinion and how decisions on set and in promotion strategy directly correlate with the reputational outcomes that are now under dispute. And the stakes could not be higher, because reputational damage in Hollywood carries significant financial and career consequences. And with the major corporate entities, including production companies, studios, PR agencies, and branding firms all implicated, the ripple effects of the court rulings could extend far beyond the individuals' names in the lawsuit. And the drama does not end there, because each new filing brings additional details about promotional missteps, tone-deaf campaigns, and strategic coordination that allegedly created tension on set and amplified public criticism, while the public narrative continues to diverge from what the defense claims is the underlying reality. And while headlines might focus on deleted messages or social media spikes, the filings present a far more nuanced account, showing a months-long sequence of events with predictable cause and effect. And according to the defense, the key to understanding the backlash is to follow the timeline, from casting and wardrobe decisions to public appearances, interviews, and marketing content, all of which contributed incrementally to the public perception. And as the motion argues, allowing the defense to present these elements in court is essential to ensure a fair trial, because otherwise, the jury would be deprived of critical context about why public criticism occurred and how much of it was a natural consequence of decisions made by multiple parties over time. And within this complex procedural battle, there was also a subtext about power and influence, control, and the interplay between personal relationships, professional decisions, and public image. Because every action on set and in promotion is magnified when high-profile actors and executives are involved, and the court must weigh these competing interests while maintaining adherence to civil procedure and the rules of evidence, which creates a tension between public interest and procedural fairness. And as each motion, subpoena, and interrogatory unfolds, the suspense builds because viewers and court watchers alike are left anticipating what evidence will be allowed, what narrative will be heard, and what impact these rulings could have not just on reputations, but on the future of the careers involved in the entertainment industry. And when you consider the context of cross-promotions, branding tie-ins, marketing videos, skits, and public appearances, it becomes clear that every decision made months in advance is now being examined under the lens of legality, fairness, and causation. And in the midst of all of this, the question of deleted signal messages becomes less about technology and more about whether one side can shape the story to prevent a jury from hearing a defense that implicates multiple parties and actions that were visible and documented in plain sight. And as a result, every filing functions as both a legal argument and a dramatic reveal because it exposes strategies, decisions, and communications that the public has not seen before. And the suspense comes not from rumor or gossip, but from what is documented and now at stake in court, as the parties fight for narrative control over a story that has captivated public attention for months. And as viewers watch this battle unfold, the stakes feel immediate because the outcome of these procedural disputes could determine which version of events reaches a jury and which version is suppressed, leaving us to wonder who will ultimately control the story and what the repercussions will be for everyone involved in this high-stakes Hollywood legal drama. And as the filings continue, the narrative twists and the suspense grows with each new allegation, defense, and procedural maneuver because every claim and counterclaim adds to the tension and uncertainty surrounding this case. And as the public follows along, there is a loop of anticipation as filings are released and analyzed, and each new disclosure adds up the next chapter in an unfolding drama that is both legal and personal, which keeps the audience engaged and waiting for the next development in what is proving to be one of the most complex and suspenseful cases involving major Hollywood figures in recent memory. As the courtroom drama continues to unfold, the tensions surrounding Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Maximum Effort Productions, Leslie Sloan, Sony, and the extended web of PR firms, branding teams, and legal counsel escalates. Because every filing, every motion, and every interrogatory is not just a legal maneuver. It is a strategic revelation that sheds light on months of behind-the-scenes activity that the public has only glimpsed through headlines, social media posts, and selective media coverage. And what becomes increasingly clear is that the narrative being constructed in court paints a far different picture than the one the public has been led to believe. Because according to the defense, Lively's actions and those of her husband and associated production and marketing teams were the primary drivers of the reputational backlash that she now claims was orchestrated by Wayfair and other responding parties. And as these motions for spoliation of evidence and motions for sanctions are argued, the core question revolves around the legitimacy and relevance of deleted signal messages and whether their absence justifies barring the defense from presenting evidence that directly contradicts the plaintiff's narrative. And within this complex web of accusations and counterclaims, there is a recurring theme of control and manipulation. Because the filings suggest that the plaintiff's own pre-lawsuit coordination with media outlets, including the New York Times, was designed to shape public perception in a way that favored their narrative while limiting the exposure of their own role in generating controversy. And by coordinating the release of selective materials ahead of filing a complaint, Lively and her team allegedly engaged in what the defense characterizes as a sham action designed to launder stolen communications and present a spliced and decontextualized version of events that portrayed the backlash as externally generated, when in reality, it was a direct consequence of choices made on set and in promotional strategy. And as each interrogatory is answered and each response is documented, a pattern emerges showing that reputational damage is not an isolated incident, but a cumulative result of actions spanning casting, wardrobe decisions, marketing tie-ins, promotional videos, skits, social media campaigns, interviews, and public appearances, all of which were executed in conjunction with production and branding partners. And the defense emphasizes that these choices had foreseeable outcomes because public perception reacts predictably to tone in marketing. And the mishandling of sensitive subject matter in promotions, especially when tied to personal branding and commercial products, can amplify scrutiny and criticism exponentially. And further complicating the matter is the interwoven personal dynamic between Lively and Reynolds, because according to filings, their professional collaboration is deeply entangled with personal considerations, including jealousy, control, and alignment of public image, which the defense argues directly contributed to the creation of a hostile and chaotic environment on set that alienated cast and crew and escalated negative attention from media outlets and social media. And as the court reviews the detailed responses to interrogatories, it becomes evident that the defense has meticulously documented a chronology of events, beginning with initial casting, announcements, and wardrobe decisions, continuing through on-set interactions, marketing campaigns, press events, interviews, social media posts, and the eventual filing of the complaint, showing a direct line of causation between the plaintiff's own actions and the subsequent public reaction. And the filings also highlight that the plaintiff's decision to limit her professional engagements and to align her appearances with her husband's schedule contributed to a perception of exclusivity and control that further shaped public opinion, while simultaneously limiting mitigation efforts for reputational harm. And the filings contend that rather than taking proactive steps to repair her reputation, the plaintiff engaged in actions that magnified criticism, including tying commercial brands to sensitive film subject matter, promoting lighthearted content in contrast to the film's serious themes, and coordinating media appearances that prioritized personal branding over the narrative of the project. And in addition to these public-facing actions, the legal filings underscore that behind-the-scenes attempts to influence media narratives and block counter-narratives through aggressive legal strategies have created a layer of complexity that compounds public misunderstanding and perception of events. And the defense highlights that the plaintiff's reliance on selective documents, including confidential CRD filings and pre-lawsuit communications with the press, was part of a calculated strategy to misrepresent the sequence and context of events, creating a false impression that negative publicity was externally generated, when in reality, the public scrutiny was largely self-induced. And the motion for spoliation of evidence, which seeks to prevent the introduction of defense arguments based on documented actions on set and in marketing efforts, is framed as a panic maneuver designed to suppress context that could otherwise be used to demonstrate that reputational damage arose from plaintiff and associated parties' own decisions and not from an external smear campaign. And what adds further drama to the proceedings is the repeated emphasis on unclean hands, a legal principle invoked by the defense to argue that Lively herself engaged in wrongful conduct that mirrors the very behavior she attributes to others, including orchestrating smear campaigns, manipulating media narratives, interfering with cast and crew dynamics, and downplaying the seriousness of the film's subject matter, all of which contributed to the negative public perception that she now seeks to attribute to other parties. And in the filings, the defense also points out that attempts to claim mitigation failures are contradicted by evidence showing that plaintiff declined opportunities to restore her public image by refusing certain professional engagements and aligning her work choices with personal considerations rather than proactively addressing reputational issues. And as the case unfolds, the interplay between legal strategy and public perception becomes increasingly apparent because the findings reveal that every procedural maneuver, including motions to compel, sanctions, subpoenas, and interrogatory responses, serves the dual purpose of shaping the court record and influencing the narrative that the public and media perceive as accurate. And what makes this particularly compelling is the extent to which marketing strategies executed by Maximum Effort Productions and its principal Ryan Reynolds have been cited as catalysts for public scrutiny, because tone-deaf skits, promotional videos, and cross-branded marketing efforts that incorporated themes from the film created a disconnect with audiences and amplified public criticism in ways that are documented in the filings. And further, the defense emphasizes that interpersonal conflicts on set, including alleged alienation of cast and crew, conflicts over creative control, and disputes during promotional activities, are central to understanding the backlash. And as each interrogatory response is examined, the evidence paints a detailed picture showing that reputational harm cannot be disentangled from actions taken by the plaintiff and her collaborators, and that any attempt to blame external parties exclusively is unsupported by the chronological record of events, which includes casting, wardrobe, marketing tie-ins, cross-promotional events, interviews, and social media engagement, all contributing to public perception. And the filings also stress that efforts to suppress defense evidence by claiming deleted signal messages are dispositive is a strategic attempt to prevent the jury from seeing the full context of events and understanding the causation between plaintiffs' and associated parties' actions and resulting backlash. And as the narrative continues to unfold, it is clear that this is not simply a case about deleted messages or technical procedural disputes, but about accountability for decisions made both publicly and privately that have measurable impact on reputational outcomes. And as the court considers these arguments, the suspense builds, because every filing adds new layers of factual detail, legal strategy, and procedural maneuvering that keeps both the court and the public engaged, in anticipation of how the story will ultimately be framed in the eyes of the jury and the press, and what the long-term implications will be for the careers and reputations of high-profile actors, producers, executives, and branding partners whose actions are now under scrutiny. And within this highly charged legal and public environment, the stakes are intensified by the intertwining of personal and professional dynamics, because decisions driven by personal relationships, jealousy, control, or alignment of public image have real consequences when amplified through media coverage, social media engagement, and marketing campaigns. And as each motion is filed and each interrogatory answered, the drama continues to escalate, because the narrative revealed in filings shows that reputational damage is a direct consequence of actions over months rather than a sudden targeted campaign. And as a result, every procedural argument about deleted messages or motions for sanctions functions as a layer in a larger story of Hollywood power, control, perception, and consequences, where the interplay between personal decisions, professional strategy, and public reaction has created a suspenseful legal drama that captures attention, because the stakes are both personal and professional for all parties involved. And as this Hollywood legal storm rages on, every filing, every motion, and every leaked document peels back another layer of the truth, revealing a tangled web of ambition, control, and personal drama, where reputations are on the line and every move could tip the scales. And the question remains, who will emerge unscathed and who will be exposed? Because in this case, nothing is as it seems, and every revelation pulls us deeper into a world where power, influence, and personal relationships collide. And as the dust settles, we're left asking, what really happened behind the cameras and in the boardrooms? And how will it all change everything for those at the center of this unprecedented spectacle?